This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Osama bin Laden is alive and well and issuing orders to his commanders. That's the message from the new military leader of the Taliban in Afghanistan. Speaking exclusively to Al Jazeera, Haji Mansour Dadullah, whose brother led military operations for the Taliban until his death earlier this year, says he's received a letter of condolence from bin Laden.
Sheikh Osama bin Laden is alive and active. He's carrying out his duties. The latest proof that he is alive and well is that he sent me a letter of condolences after the martyrdom of my brother, and he advised me to follow my brother's path. He also appealed to the Muslims to follow the footsteps of the deceased Mullah Dadullah, because he was a mujahid, and God has granted him his wish, martyrdom. God's willing, his blood will be fire on the enemies, and we will be victorious. Sheikh Osama prefers not to be seen or meet anyone, because if he makes himself available to the media, maybe he will be facing danger. His presence is an honor to all of us. We don't want to lose him. I also ask him not to meet anyone and remain in hiding and continue to give his instructions to the commanders so that Al-Qaeda would remain alive and continue its activities all over the world.
Palestinians have been marking the 40th anniversary of the Middle East War. Israel won a resounding victory in 1967, but the consequences of that conflict have determined the fate of the Palestinians ever since. Owen Fay reports on how Palestinians have been remembering.
1, 2, 3, 4. Occupation no more!
The anniversary of 40 years is being marked, as it has been so often, by protesters demanding an immediate end to the occupation, and a somber message from the Palestinian Prime Minister on the prospects for the future.
There
will be no solution to the current political crisis without lifting the inhuman siege and returning of the tax money, releasing the prisoners, which constitute 20% of the total Palestinian people since 1967.
67 حوالي 20% من أبناء الشعب الفلسطيني. 40 عاماً
40 years has passed since the 67th, and Israel has continued its occupation of the land, but not of the Palestinian people.
Elsewhere, many chose to mark this anniversary with silence. In Nablus, demonstrators raised their voices, calling for the Israelis to leave their land, the same demand repeated by generations of Palestinians before them. Mixed in with the anger, however, are signs of frustration.
This day is a major catastrophe for us. Do we need to mark the occasions of 48 or 67 or even the wall? The Israelis have mistreated us, yet all the Arab states are quiet. Down with the silence of Arab governments. All of them are silent.
The protests may take different forms, but the essential message remains the same. In the words of the Prime Minister, nothing will stop the struggle of the Palestinians to gain their independence and their freedom. Owen Fay, Al Jazeera.
Well, the divided city and the heart of this ongoing conflict is Jerusalem. Al Jazeera's Sami Zaidan is there. Over to you, Sami.
Thanks, Julie. Yes, we are here marking the 40th anniversary of the 1967 war, a war which impacted and changed so many lives. Well, we are continuing to talk to people about the continuing legacy of 1967, and joining me now is Mr. Yossi Beilin, is a former Israeli negotiator and head of the Meretz party. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.
What's the lesson to be taken away from the fact that so many governments, including this one, has come to power, promising to make big changes, and we have seen so many failures?
Well, it's very difficult to speak about lessons. What we may say is that both parties missed too many opportunities. And it is a tragedy because people know how to solve the problem. But for the extremists on both sides, the people who want to live, the people who want their kids to get education, the people who believed that it is worthwhile living in this region without leaving it or emigrating from it, they are the majority, and they are ready for compromises, and they are ready for peace, and they know the price for peace. And still, nothing is happening, at least between us and the Palestinians after so many years. And just to believe that I was a young man who fought in a right war in '67, but believed that this was the last war and that afterward we will have peace with our neighbors. Get no peace with Israel, and then after 40 years to meet with you here in Jerusalem without having a solution is the saddest thing that could have happened to us.
Well, now, as we know, moving forward on from Khartoum, you have an Arab summit that has repeatedly offered Israel a plan, and the no is coming the other way this time. Is Israeli politics simply too fractured to make those hard decisions? Are the will, as you put it, of the majority left to the mercy of the minority?
Well, what is happening is that once one side is ready, the other side is not ready. You are right about the Arab initiative of 2002 is a very, very important and historic development. And the fact that we are not embracing it and we are not saying, okay, let's negotiate now on this initiative is a big mistake. And what my role in the Israeli political arena is to convince people that the Arab initiative, that the Geneva initiative, that the Clinton plan, all these things should be the basis for our negotiations, and that we still have a partner on the Palestinian side, which is the PLO.
June 5th, 1967, the day the Six-Day War began exactly 40 years ago. That's a day Israelis and Jews around the world will never forget. IBA's Eli Wargelenter looks back at 6 days that changed the course of history in our region.
It started 40 years ago today. 6 days of war that fundamentally transformed the Middle East, a geographical, political, and emotional transformation that reverberates to this day. The weeks leading up to the war were perhaps a time of the deepest uncertainty Israelis had ever experienced, except maybe during the War of Independence in 1948. The build-up to the Six-Day War started in mid-May of 1967. First, Egypt and Syria formed a mutual defense pact against Israel. Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser then closed the Straits of Tiran, expelled the UN peacekeeping forces, mobilized his troops, and massed armor brigades on the Israeli border. By June 1st, the stage was set for war, and Nasser announced to the world that it was finally time to wipe the Zionist country off the map. Discussions were held at the United Nations to avert the looming war, but to no avail. On May 30th, Jordan's King Hussein announced that he was joining the Egyptian-Syrian Defense Pact. The die was cast. In Jerusalem, Moshe Dayan was made defense minister in an emergency unity government. When Israeli intelligence indicated that Egypt was about to attack, the cabinet decided to launch a full-scale preemptive strike. In a pre-dawn raid on Monday morning, June 5th, Israeli jets destroyed almost all the fighter planes of Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and Iraq before their pilots can get them off the ground. With most of their air forces a smoldering wreck, the Arabs had lost the war almost as soon as it had begun. Arab armor without air cover was destroyed by Israeli planes, and Arab infantry without armor was no match for the Israeli land forces. In Jerusalem, the fighting was different. This was not the Sinai Desert or the Golan Heights. Here, the war was fiercely fought through hand-to-hand combat with Jordanian soldiers.
We knew that it's our duty to win. We have to bring the old city of Jerusalem back to the bosom of our people.
On the second day of the war, June 6th, Israeli paratroopers, led by Matagur, advanced into the Old City and liberated the holiest site in Judaism, the Temple Mount. After 1,897 years, it was once more under Jewish control. Images were soon broadcast around the world of ecstatic Israelis from West Jerusalem pouring into the east to visit the Western Wall and other holy places that had been inaccessible for 2 decades. Meanwhile, the war continued on the other fronts. But within 6 days, Israel had taken the Sinai, driven the Jordan Legion from the West Bank, and took over the Golan Heights. Israel now controlled an area 3.5 times larger than it had a week before. Suddenly, there was a new order in the Middle East. A few days after the UN ceasefire of June 11th, Abba Eban, Israel's representative at the UN, made his famous speech. He held out the olive branch to the Arab world, inviting the Arab states to join Israel at the peace table. Eban told them the territories taken in the war could be returned in exchange for formal recognition, bilateral negotiations, and peace. It was a first in the history of warfare. Never before had the victor sued for peace. But the vanquished refused. Rather than respond to Israel's invitation, the Arab states met for a conference in Khartoum, Sudan that August. They unanimously decided in favor of the now famous 3 Khartoum no's: no recognition, no negotiation, no peace. In the ensuing years, Israel returned the Sinai to Egypt under the 1979 peace treaty, signed a peace accord with Jordan in 1994, and withdrew troops and settlers from Gaza in 2005.
To look back on the last 40 years, we have peace with Jordan country, we have peace with Egypt, and it's, I said to say, but all these wars, in Six-Day War, in Yom Kippur War, all the other operations and army activity around the borders, around the problems, I'm sure that this activity brought the peace.
مشاهدينا الكرام، أهلا بكم في هذا البرنامج الخاص عن صوت الشارع العربي في الذكرى الأربعين لهزيمة.
Welcome. This is a special program about the reactions of ordinary Arabs to the 40th anniversary of the June 5th, 1967 defeat. Many of us believe that the 1967 war was actually a war of regimes, not a war of nations. The regimes were mainly preoccupied with staying in power. Many of our governments did not change their discourse even after the defeat. Some even tried to convey the defeat as a victory. At the time, Arab media provided the population with information designed to make them feel better. It played with words and manipulated the truth to serve the interests of the Arab regimes. Today, 40 years later, many things have changed on the ground. Arab regimes have lowered the ceiling of their demands, but what about the Arab citizens? Are they still overpowered, or can they now push for change? How do they see the 1967 war, and where do they get their information about this 40-year-old war? We do just that in this program. We start directly from Amman with our reporter Yasser Abu Hilali, who will interview a group of students from the Jordanian University. Yasser, how do the Jordanians view the 1967 war?
ياسر، كيف ينظر الشارع الأردني لذكرى حرب حزيران؟
The situation in Jordan is unique. In 1967, the West Bank was actually part of the Jordanian kingdom, but after the war, Jordan lost it, and consequently half of its population became displaced Palestinian refugees. Let us listen to the views of students who did not live through the defeat. How do you view the June 1967 defeat?
June 5th is a sad memory for us. Of course, we were born after 1967. The 1967 war was a disappointment to all Arab countries. Israel fought Jordan, Palestine, and Egypt, and we lost the West Bank and Palestine, which was a holy land. We hope to regain it, God willing.
Where did you get your information about the 1967 defeat? Did you get it from schools, media, and books?
Of course, we got it from books and universities, since we are upper division college students. But we also learned about it in school at all ages.
The June 5th, 1967 war was against all expectations. We thought that the Arab armies were about to achieve a victory because they gave the people that impression. But all of a sudden, we were surprised by a catastrophe. We lost the Golan Heights, Sinai, the West Bank, and Jerusalem. Truly, it was a surprise to the entire Arab nation.
You did not live through the 1967 war. Where did you get this view?
Television series, films, books in high school, all these sources contributed in my building my image about the 1967 events.
How do you feel about it today?
Honestly, I was only now reminded of the 1967 war. It was a big catastrophe.
سمير عفوا أولا على هذا اللبس في الاسم لكن من
We now move to another Arab country. We have our reporter Samir Anbar. Samir, do you feel the Egyptians are aware of the 1967 defeat?
قطاع عريض من المصريين يرى أن هزيمة يونيو قد نالت كثيرا من
A large segment of the Egyptian population believe that the June 1967 defeat has cost Egypt a great deal of its prestige, but it never broke the country's will to avenge the defeat by the Israelis. This was evident in the war of attrition, which lasted for 3 years after the 1967 war, as well as the 1973 October victory. However, 40 years later, it seems that the Egyptians have changed their view of the defeat. Let us listen to a number of young people who did not live through the defeat.
The 1967 war was a surprise to all Egyptians. The Egyptian, Syrian, and Palestinian armies were defeated. However, only 6 years later, we avenged our defeat through the 1973 war, where we defeated Israel.
We go now to someone who is older. What do you know about the 1967 war, and what caused our defeat?
Of course, in the 1967 war, people were defending their land and honor. We had heroes. Some were martyred and some are still alive. They were going in the middle of the fire without any fear because they were defending their land.
What was the cause of the 1967 defeat?
Frankly, I do not know. God knows.
What do you know about the 1967 defeat? Do you think it has affected the country in a way so that Egyptians seek to avenge their defeat and liberate their land that was occupied in 1967?
No, sir. Today is different. Today we are going forward. We should not go backward. We should forget the past and think about the future. The past is gone.
Mr. Karim Bakhlaudullah, let's discuss the topic in more detail. Some say that one of the outcomes of the 1967 war was that the Palestinian revolution was exported to Lebanon. My question is specific. Why was the Palestinian revolution exported to Lebanon and remained there unchanged? Do you think, as some right-wing Lebanese thinkers used to say in the past, that the Palestinian presence was one of the most important causes of the civil war in Lebanon?
لماذا؟ لأنه النظام اللبناني نظام حريات وعنده قابلية.
First, why? Because the Lebanese system is one that promotes freedom. It has a tendency to welcome all foreign movements. Thus, I think that the Palestinian resistance benefited from the system of freedoms. This is the first point. The second central point is that there was a division in Lebanon. The Palestinian resistance found support and major political cover from a large segment of the Lebanese. Such support could not be found in Jordan, for example. I have spoken with Abu Ayad. Abu Ayad told me that our problem in Jordan was not that we lost militarily, but that we lost politically because we could not find any group to support us. However, when we came to Lebanon, our top priority was to take political cover. What was known back then as the national movement, or the left, provided political cover that secured the permanent presence of the resistance. Thus, a system of freedoms on one side and Lebanese divisions as well as Lebanese cover for the Palestinians on the other side answers the question of why.
Some say that one of the most important reasons behind the Lebanese civil war was the presence of the Palestinians.
I think this is an historical truth. Had there not been differences over Palestinian weapons and the presence of the Palestinians, had the Palestinians not established a wide security zone in the southern regions, which came to be known as Fatah land back then, had it not been for all of this, the Lebanese civil war, had it occurred, would not have had such far-reaching Arab and international implications.
Mr. Karim, could Lebanon and the Lebanese leadership have neutralized what was being hatched and conspired in the region? Could Lebanon have been able to neutralize this?
I don't think so. No doubt we made some major mistakes, and it would have been possible to reduce them. But since the history of a major Palestinian presence in Lebanon, and after that, an effective Palestinian resistance in Lebanon, and the rivalry between Lebanon and Israel at the ideological and economic levels, all of this allowed Israel to target Lebanon. I want to give a simple example that has been talked about. Everyone says that the Sheba farms are Lebanese territory. Syria says they are Lebanese. The world acknowledges that they are Lebanese, but Israel does not accept this. It wants the Sheba farms to be part of Syria, whether Syria wants it or not. I think that Israel wanted the Lebanese civil war to take place in order to target Lebanese ideology that calls for religious coexistence or Lebanese coexistence. Israel wanted to show that the only acceptable language in the Arab world is the language of racism, which means that every religion has its own state, or that it is impossible for different religions to coexist in one state. I think that this was Israel's objective, and it had to invade Lebanon in order to achieve this objective.
Lebanese are living in a state of anxiety due to the current security situation in Nahr al-Bared and Ain al-Halwa refugee camps. Although calm returned to Nahr al-Bared, the situation in Ain al-Halwa is still tense as the Lebanese army continues to surround it. According to unconfirmed reports, dozens of Fatah al-Islam fighters have surrendered to the Palestinian mainstream Fatah organization. Meanwhile, Lebanese officials made a connection between the incidents in the Nahr al-Bared and the Ain al-Halwa refugee camps and the recent bomb attack that targeted a vacant minibus in the predominantly Christian Saad Bushariya neighborhood in eastern Beirut. This explosion, which is the fourth of its kind in the past 2 weeks, has injured 10 people and caused substantial property damage. The Lebanese security forces have arrested one person in connection with the blast. Alia Ibrahim reports from Beirut.
The fourth explosion in less than a month came with no surprise to the Lebanese. The Lebanese citizens and officials are living amidst a state of anxiety due to the fragile security situation in the country. Like other previous explosions, the Saad Bushariya bomb attack was intended to spread fear and terror among the Lebanese. The residential and commercial nature of the Saad Bushariya makes it a busy area at most times. The explosion has injured 10 people and caused substantial property damage. This explosion, which was the fourth of its kind during the past 2 weeks, came with no surprise to the Lebanese. However, it added to Lebanese fear that their country started to witness a wave of security chaos that is open to all possibilities. But to expect something doesn't make it less bitter.
I swear to God, every time we go to bed, we look under the pillows to see if there is a bomb. As far as security is concerned, the entire country is vulnerable.
Meanwhile, Lebanese officials, who linked the incidents in Nar al-Bared with the recent wave of explosions in the country, believe that the number of bomb attacks will increase in order to mount pressure on the government to resign.
It is obvious that 4 bomb attacks were meant to send a political message. The perpetrators wanted to isolate what happened in the north from the rest of the country. But in the same token, they wanted to show that they can hit anywhere in the country. They wanted to mount pressure on the majority in order to get more political concessions, but this is not acceptable.
Despite the dark image portrayed on the ground, the government started to debate on a number of issues that may lead to a political and security breakthrough in the country. Aliya Ibrahim, Dubai TV, Beirut.
إلى باكستان حيث منح الرئيس الباكستاني برفيز مشرف.
The Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf shocked television outlets by granting the government monitoring agency new wide-scale authorities believed to violate the principles of the media profession. According to a presidential order, the government has the authority to monitor the electronic media in Pakistan, confiscate equipment, and close down media institutions as well as suspend television or radio licenses.
تفاوتت ردود الفعل في باكستان حول القوانين التي اتخذتها الحكومة الباكستانية.
There were mixed reactions in Pakistan about the laws that were enacted by the Pakistani government against local television stations, banning these stations from transmitting live or direct broadcast of demonstrations in support of Chief Justice or in criticism of the military institution and Pakistani army for their role in internal politics. After having begun a phase of media openness by giving many licenses to a number of private television stations, the Pakistani government does not view these new laws and measures as attempts to restrict the freedom of the press. Rather, the government believes that this is an attempt to prevent harm against institutions that guarantee the security of Pakistan. However, those who work in the media believe that the government's actions during its crisis with senior Pakistani judges is an attempt to subject the independent media under the state's authority. It also considers them a retreat from press freedoms, which the government had promised to protect.
Obviously, the result of all the measures that the government has taken.
Obviously, the result of all the measures that the government has taken aim to weaken the role of the media in Pakistan. The stopping of broadcasting live events has prevented our ability to give the viewer a taste of real events that are taking place. My station has been practically shut down in most parts of Pakistan. Whenever it is on air, the government would ask the cable distributor to change our channel so that citizens could not watch.
The citizens who find an outlet for fresh news about events that matter to them through private televisions began complaining after the government shut down many of these stations.
You see, I want to see an
independent media. I want a free media to report the truth.
What the government is doing is right, because the political parties are working to make the country unstable, and the media is supporting them.
Despite the measures that the Pakistani media is currently facing, the Committee to Defend Press Freedom seemed confident about the ability of many media outlets to remain steadfast in the face of pressure.
Yes, it is natural for the media to resist any measures against it. This is what is being asked of it. Media outlets have struggled for complete freedom.
Amidst the continued election year crisis between the government and senior judges and lawyers, who are supported by opposition parties, journalist unions, and guilds, are concerned that the government, which is facing many problems, will prevent them from telling the truth at a time when the information revolution has transformed the world into a small global village. Despite statements by the Pakistani government claiming that it is not taking any illegal measures that restrict press freedom in Pakistan, these demonstrations, which represent different segments of Pakistani society, are seen as a criticism of the government's action of halting the broadcast of many television stations. These demonstrations also reflect the desire of the Pakistani public to watch accurate news, but not from state-run media. For Al Modar, Jamal Ismail, Abu Dhabi TV, Islamabad.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.